we have the highest intake of calcium of any country in the world, and yet we have the highest increase of bone-related issues. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz. After a while, the Alka-Seltzer is not going to work, and you're on Nexium or Prilosec. You're too acidic, the kidneys start to overproduce, they produce a kidney stone. It's not out of nowhere. The symptoms are trying to tell us where the source of the problem is, yet most people aren't paying attention. Hey guys, welcome back to another Rest, Eat, Move podcast. We're continuing our 3-part series, and this is part 2. pH balance. If you didn't get a chance, I highly recommend listening to part 1 on cellular health and how our health begins at the cell level. Part 2 will make a lot more sense as we get into the pH balance. They're isolated principles, so you can listen to both of them. But just to recap, when it comes to cell health, everything begins at the cell level. We have 50 trillion cells. We turn over 2 to 3 trillion cells each day. And so when we're trying to get our health in order or maintaining our health, it always begins at the cell level. Principle number 2 is called pH balance. And so you'll find in part 1, you're not going to see a lot of people arguing that our health begins at the cell level. Maybe sometimes we bypass it. We come up with these tricks and fads and diets. But when you go after the science, deep into the weeds, everything begins at the cell level. Part 2 is a pretty controversial principle. pH balance. And as I guide you on this journey today, the pH balance is not a necessary solidified scientific principle, but we understand pH balance. That part is scientific. When it comes to the scientific piece, do humans have control over their pH? I'm going to argue it's probably one of the most important elements to vibrant health, and one of the things we see common when people are really declining when it comes to their health. But we have to talk about pH balance, part 2, and it starts with the commercial for Alka-Seltzer. If you're not familiar, there's a commercial, I think in the 70s, when Alka-Seltzer first became popular. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is. And in that commercial, it says, too many tacos, too much stress, too much work, not enough sleep. Then you take the Alka-Seltzer. And when you think about Alka-Seltzer, in the name is alkaline or alkalinity, Alka-Seltzer. When the body gets too acidic, those symptoms that we don't want, acid reflux, indigestion, heartburn, stomach, then we need to get more alkaline. And so I'll start right there and say, then why, if this is such a controversial issue, can we take something like Alka-Seltzer and get symptom relief? Now, I'm not a fan of taking Alka-Seltzer. I think there's a better way to maintain alkalinity. Occasionally we'll get out of balance, but we're going to talk today about a chronic condition of being too acidic. Over time, the body starts to get too acidic, and this is where the symptoms start to show up. And so let's do a little housekeeping. We're talking about the body's pH. This could be saliva, this could be blood, this could be urine. They all have a different range when it comes to pH. But I'm gonna make it simple. There's a scale. And from left to right, on the left side, and it's kind of counterintuitive, on the left side is gonna be 14, alkaline. On the right side is gonna be 0 or 1, acidic. And in the middle is neutral or balance. And the human body is gonna stay in this balance from 7.4 to 6.8. And everything we know about the human body requires us to be in this homeostasis, in this balance. Now, if you had a goldfish growing up, or if you have a pet fish or different animals that you got to control the pH, or even a pool, you kind of understand pH. You have to control it. Well, humans are pretty sophisticated. We have to have this balanced pH, but we can pretty much do anything we want, and we buffer and balance and keep us into that range. And so the range is from 7.4 to 6.8 for humans. And one of the things I always like to start with when I'm doing a presentation, when I'm explaining this principle, is talk about these buffering minerals. So the body keeps us in balance a number of different ways: how we breathe, chemical reactions, different ways to buffer, urination, saliva, breathing, releasing CO2, holding on to CO2. But one of the most fascinating things to me, as I've learned, is we have these minerals in the body: sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, phosphate, and these can be buffering minerals. So the largest mineral in the body is your bone, or calcium. And so the first thing the body looks for as that pH gets out of balance, maybe creeping towards that acidic side of 6.8, is it looks to our bones. And so it takes these minerals out of your bones, uses them, buffers them into the system, raises that pH, yet you lose some of your calcium. And I think this wakes people up when I say that we have the highest intake of calcium of any country in the world, and yet we have the highest increase of bone-related issues. So we have the weakest bones, yet we consume the most amount of calcium. This is one of the reasons I would never recommend a calcium supplement. Number one, you're not going to absorb it, and number two, that's not the source of the problem. So we have all these minerals in the body: sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, phosphate. But if we're not paying attention to our pH, we're going to use those precious minerals, these trace minerals, these electrolytes, to buffer us into balance. Magnesium's a big one. Iodine's a big one. Thyroid issues have never been higher. And so you think, well, iodine's in our salt. No, we consume iodine from food, but if we get too acidic, we leach out that iodine. Or diet soda, or these caffeinated or non-caffeinated, artificially sweetened beverages that have no calories, no sugar. They must be fantastic. Well, most of them are very acidic, including our energy drinks. And so today on this journey, we want to kind of think about, well, how do we control our pH? Why is it important? Well, let's start with some health-related issues when it comes to an acidic forming diet with high levels of stress. You have acid reflux, atrial fibrillation, brittle thinning hair, cancer, constipation, cracked nails, diarrhea, fatigue, headaches, heart disease, high blood pressure, hormonal imbalances, insomnia, irritable bowel syndrome, kidney stones, gout, muscle cramping, osteoporosis, poor digestion, premature aging, psoriasis, eczema, thyroid dysfunction, type 2 diabetes, weight gain. And so I talked about the cell in part 1, but I would say when we get into part 2, this is where when someone comes in our office or we coach them or trying to guide them, part 2 is where we really start to tackle symptoms. So if someone comes to see us with IBS, their pH is out of balance. If someone's been taking acid reflux medication for the last 10 years, their pH is out of balance. If their glomerular filtration rate, the GFR, starts to get too low, their pH is out of balance. You hear me talk about colostrum and collagen and creatine and protein powder and all these different supplements, multivitamins, synthetics. And one of the things I really never usually get a chance to explain is this is going to throw off our pH. Matt, is it unhealthy? Not necessarily. Just because something throws off our pH doesn't necessarily mean it's unhealthy. I'm going to talk about some foods that are very healthy. They tend to just be acidifying. And so the key is about balance. But if I have an opportunity to keep my body in a more alkaline state, and yet I don't require those foods or beverages, I'm going to try to stay away from them. And that's where some of these supplementations come in. We're over supplementing. Again, a little bit more science, and then we'll get into the what do we need to do or how we need to think. When you think about the pH and these buffering minerals and how to buffer, your kidneys are your pH guardian. So your kidneys are your filtration excretion system. So they excrete waste, they filter the blood and your urine. They regulate fluid and electrolyte balance. So they're regulating our system and our body. And so they're really important to the equation here. They maintain acid-base pH. So they maintain our pH balance. They help with hormones. They help with absorption of vitamin D. And so it's very important to make sure that we're connecting the dots between the pH and your kidney. And so we're putting all this demand on our kidneys, whether it's stress or processed foods or supplementation. And so that doesn't add any advantage to what we're trying to accomplish. We're overstressed, overstimulated, under-resting, overprocessed, in a hurry, over everything. Sometimes we're overtraining. We'll talk about movement. Again, our podcast, Rest, Eat, Move. Even the cells, even your pH, it all comes back to not just nutrition, sleep, and exercise has a relation. So one of my favorite slides I show, and it's kind of a rapid slide where it changes, is I have this pH. I've just explained it. pH, we got to stay in balance. In our environment, in our society, we tend to be too acidic, processed foods, lack of sleep, too much stress, not enough exercise, and we get too acidic. And then next thing you know, these symptoms show up. Next thing I know, people are saying I'm gluten intolerant. I have digestive issues. Not necessarily. You could be too acidic. So I show this slide, and on the slide is the range, 14 all the way to 1. And I put a graph up there. I put a potato, a whole food potato is going to be on the alkaline side. It's not processed. It's got digestive enzymes, bacteria. It's not going to have any of these other chemicals. It's a potato. It's a whole food. And then the other side is a potato chip that's been processed. And everyone kind of understands one's been processed and one hasn't. But if I remove the gluten from a processed food, is it more processed or less processed? The answer is it's more processed. And so the number one thing when people think, well, I can't eat this, I'm allergic to it, or I have an intolerance to it, I like to explain the key is we got to get your pH in balance so maybe you can handle it. And so the number one reason that we're having these gluten intolerances outside of stress is we're trying to tackle it by processing food more, which then makes our digestion weaker because our pH gets thrown off. And so a whole potato versus potato chip has a big impact on your pH. Alkalized, sea salt or table salt, which has two minerals extremely acidic. Huge difference, small change. Most people like the taste of the sea salt better. Again, a huge effect can happen in the body when you're consuming a product with over 80 minerals, sea salt, versus 2 minerals. And so the pH alkalinity matters. Or then you have beverages. You have, soft drinks, wine, alcohol, energy drinks. These are on the acidic side. So alcohol is acidic. Pop, whether it's diet or regular, is acidic. And then our energy drinks are the most acidic beverage or food we can put in the human body. I don't care if it's Red Bull or no sugar or these new fancy ones that say they're healthy. They're an energy drink with 8,000 to 20,000 percentage daily intake of B vitamins, different properties, taurine, choline, L-carnitine. They're a hypertrophic supplement that's stimulating your adrenal glands. So not only is it going to create cortisol and stress, it's also very acidic. It's going to leach out these minerals. And then you go to water. The reason I don't recommend distilled water, it's going to be the most acidic. Based on where you live and the type of tap water, going to be more in the neutral phase. And then you start to see more of these waters. Springer and artesian is going to be the type of bottled water I recommend because it's more alkaline. And then you see advertised alkaline water. This is where you got to be very careful. So like I said, it's very controversial, this pH balance. There's some skeptics, and then there's some people trying to profit on it. And so I can take any water, purified water, any source of water, could be crummy, you purify it, and then I can add cheap minerals to it and make it more alkaline. Again, what you'll find, and the third principle that we'll talk in part 3 hammers this home, is I'd rather you consume water from the best source. That's why I recommend spring or artesian. Or there's these options for naturally carbonated mineral water, which are high mineral content, has natural CO2. Those are some other options. But what you drink matters, and one of the tricks that I really try to get people to do, no matter what, especially if they're having symptoms, is putting lemons or limes or any citrus fruit in their water. By digestion, this is very alkalizing. In nature, it might seem lemons and limes are very acidic. Well, when they break down into potassium, magnesium, and calcium, the body starts to absorb the citric acid. The byproduct is alkaline. And so half a lemon, quarter of a lemon in water, first thing in the morning, do that for 2 weeks, create a habit around it. This is one of the best ways to balance that body pH. So if you have acid reflux, you're taking acid reflux medication, challenge me on this. Lemon in your water first thing in the morning. Do that for 2 weeks. Next thing you know, you start to see the symptoms changing. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz. After a while, the Alka-Seltzer is not going to work, and you're on Nexium or Prilosec. One of the fastest cancer categories in the world is esophageal cancer. We're covering up the symptom, not going after the source of the problem. And so what we drink, what we eat, the supplements we put in our body dictate our pH. And so we tend to live the line of in a hurry, processed foods, want a quick fix, take more supplements, take more pills, and the body's just overwhelmed. And so if we overwhelm the kidneys with all these supplements, if we overwhelm the kidneys with all this processed foods, if we overwhelm the kidneys with stress and alcohol, our body is going to start to show some symptoms. But then we go into stress and sleep. And so stress, how can stress change our pH? Well, our thoughts can change our pH. And I have this cool little graphic, this pH target. And one of the things that's really interesting on it is a couple alkaline things you can do: fresh air, love, sunlight, touch, micro break, sleep, movement, belly breathing, positivity, play, limiting screen time, white space, kindness, nature, massage, empathy. And you think, well, what does this have to do with pH? Has everything to do with fight or flight. And you create this chronic fight or flight from lack of some of these things. You create cortisol. Cortisol creates inflammation. Inflammation starts to wreak havoc on your gut health. Inflammation then starts to create this leaching of minerals because the body's getting too acidic. So it's not just what you eat, it's how you think. It's how you rest. It's how much sleep you're getting. It's how much daily movement are you getting? Are you breathing? Are you creating this exercise? Are you creating the power of daily movement to flush out and control the body's pH? And then you got the things on the other side of the equation. Chest breathing, restrictive eating, social isolation. Maybe you're eating too healthy. You have no enjoyment, no social life. Maybe there's blame, poor sleep, smoking, stress, sedentary lifestyle, guilt, negativity, medications, drugs, fear, alcohol. These are some things that can make you acidic. And so there's acid-forming sides of the equation and there's alkalizing sides of the equation. What you're going to find is we're going to try to get and tip the scales. If it's 50-50, we want to be about 60% alkalizing foods, practices, lifestyles, and then we don't have to be perfect. 40% of the time, we don't have to pay attention too much some of these more acidic. And again, not everything that creates acid, especially food, is unhealthy. Animal products tend to be more acidic because they're amino acid. But if you balance them out, so if you're having foods with more acidic, so maybe you're eating a lot of meat, balancing them out with alkalizing foods like fruits and vegetables, potatoes, ancient grains can balance that meal. And so let's think of a couple of examples. Your pool. So if you grew up with a pool, you have the chlorine, or you don't use the chlorine. When you open a pool, it's green, it's got algae, bacteria. It's going to be more alkaline. So things are going to grow. And from a pool standpoint and just from the aesthetic, and you also don't want to have, sedentary water. There's other harmful things that can happen. You got to get that pH down to be more acidic. We'll clean up the pool. But if you get too much chlorine, you get it too acidic, you start to burn your suit, irritate your eyes, maybe even dye your hair. And so we understand that in a pool, you test the pH. Too much growth, alkaline, in the pool's sake, is a bad thing. Too acidic, it's going to be a little bit irritating. You want to keep that balance. But it's like the opposite when it comes to our health. We want to be on that growth side. We want things to grow. We want probiotics, microbiome, good gut health, good gut lining. We don't want to kill it. Well, Matt, I'm constipated, or I have diarrhea, or I have this burning sensation. It's a good chance you're too acidic. Or I like to think about the ocean. The ocean tends to be more alkaline, from 7.8 to 8.4. Things thrive in the ocean. Well, one of the challenges with the ocean is it's acidifying. People, CO2, carbon, vehicles, less fish, less marine activity. And so it's happening all around us. This pH is super important. The periodic table, potential hydrogen, is what pH stands for. But today, I just want to give you this principle because people are struggling with these symptoms. Think of the amount of people that get kidney stones, think they come out of nowhere. Your kidneys control your pH. You're too acidic, the kidneys start to overproduce, they produce a kidney stone. It's not out of nowhere. The symptoms are trying to tell us where the source of the problem is, yet most people aren't paying attention. And so what are we going to do? What we like to do is use a couple tools. Our food target is a great tool because at the center of the target, it's going to tend to be the most alkalizing foods. So the green area of the target, think alkalizing. The red area of the target is going to be acidifying. We have this pH target that even takes it another level. And so you got the acid forming sides of the equation, and then you have the alkalizing sides of the equation. But you don't have to be perfect. The goal is, can we eat, 60 to 70% of our foods to be more alkaline? And then we can balance the acid side. I think when you think about these minerals, and I don't recommend taking a magnesium supplement or calcium supplement or vitamin D, because we can hold on to these minerals if we get the balance of the body from a pH standpoint. Couple ways that I make sure that I balance my pH. Number one is sleep. 8 hours of sleep, one of the best ways to calm the mind, to rejuvenate, flush the toxins, manage some of these cortisol levels, these hormones, and it really allows the body to clean itself. And then I start my day. My wheatgrass juice is probably one of the most alkalizing foods that I put in my body. Over 90 minerals, extremely alkaline. It will oxidize and change color within minutes. And so that's one of the benefits of the wheatgrass juice. We just got back from the wheatgrass juice farm, saw those guys. We try to go and stop by there and see how everything's going. It's an amazing process. It's an amazing farming. It's not easy. If you're doing the frozen wheatgrass juice, you might be wrestling with the plastic and opening it, and it's frustrating, but a little bit of effort is why it's such an amazing superfood. The spirulina chlorella, there's another alkalizing. Anything with the color green, these are going to be your alkalizing nutrients. But I think a couple of the things that you can do right away, back to lemon in the water. Quarter of a lemon in 8 ounces of water, first thing in the morning, right when you wake up, helps to alkalize the body. Improve digestion, maybe minimizing that acid reflux, boost your metabolism, start to create better hydration, better digestion, just by adding lemons or limes, or I even like to do oranges in my morning water. If we start to balance the pH, we start to see those symptoms go away. Now you may say, Matt, I like coffee. Well, coffee tends to be acidic. I'm not saying get rid of your coffee, but if you're drinking coffee all day and then having a couple sodas and then a glass of red wine, and then you're going through fast food and you're in a hurry and you have stress, and the body's going to get too acidic, and then it starts leaching out these minerals. Matt, I don't know where the atrial fibrillation came from. Well, when we leach out magnesium over and over and over again chronically, the heart needs the magnesium. Matt, my doctor thinks I should be taking a calcium supplement because I'm aging, worried about my bones. Well, the best way to keep your bones healthy is to make sure that you're keeping your body more alkaline to hold on to the calcium. You can take all the calcium in the world, you're not going to absorb it with a laundry list of other minerals to go along with it. Part 1, cell health. This is part 2, principle number 2, pH balance, potential hydrogen. What you need to know is we need to get the body more alkaline. If we can get the body more on the alkaline side of the equation, you hold on to these precious minerals, the body starts to thrive. Think about that pool where it's making growth. We want to get more in that category. Acid equals inflammation. Inflammation is the root cause of all disease and illness. And so if we want to eliminate that, prevent that, minimize that, we got to move the body in the alkaline side of the equation. I've never not had someone knock it off their acid reflux medication. Some people have been struggling with it 20, 30, 40 years. Started with Tums or Alka-Seltzer, went to a medication. Next thing you know, they got to sleep in a chair because they can't even lay down. The body is telling us something. It may be even giving us a clue like a symptom, and our job is to answer it and try to find the source of the problem. And that's why pH matters. And so as we wrap this up, the goal is, can we move the body in a more alkaline state? Doesn't have to just be our food, could be our rest, our daily movement, our sleep. These things all matter when it comes to pH. And I think it's really important. Acid equals inflammation, and inflammation is the root cause of all disease and illness. Next time, part 3, the source, principle number 3. You could teach this to a 3rd grader. This is how you know what's healthy or what's not healthy when it comes to food. And that's part 3, principle number 3, the source. We'll see you again next time.